So if we just explore this possible future, what is the thing that humans do that's most special in mathematics? So that you could see AI not cracking for a while. So inventing new theories, so coming up with new conjectures versus proving the conjectures, building new abstractions, new representations, maybe an AI Terence Tao with seeing new connections between disparate fields.
It's a good question. I think the nature of what mathematicians do over time has changed a lot. So 1,000 years ago, mathematicians had to compute the date of Easter, and there's really complicated calculations. But it's all been automated for centuries. We don't need that anymore. They used to do spherical navigation, spherical trigonometry to navigate how to get from the old world to the new. Something a very complicated calculations. Again, been automated. Even a lot of undergraduate mathematics, even before AI, like Wolfram Alpha, for example, it's not a language model, but it can solve a lot of undergraduate level math tasks. So on the computational side, verifying routine things like having a problem and say, here's a problem in partial differential equations. Could you solve it using any of the 20 standard techniques? And they have, yes, I've tried all 20, and here are the 100 different permutations, and here's my results. And that type of thing, I think it will work very well. Type of scaling to once you solve one problem to make the AI attack 100 adjacent problems. The things that humans do still, so where the AI really struggles right now is knowing when it's made a wrong turn. That it can say, I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to split up this problem into these two cases. I'm going to try this technique. And sometimes, if you're lucky, and it's a simple problem, it's the right technique, and you solve the problem. Sometimes it will have a problem. It would propose an approach which is just complete nonsense. But it looks like a proof. So this is one annoying thing about LLM-generated mathematics. So we've had human-generated mathematics that's very low quality. Submissions for people who don't have the formal training and so forth. But if a human proof is bad, you can tell it's bad pretty quickly. It makes really basic mistakes. But the AI-generated proofs, they can look superficially flawless. And it's partly because that's what the reinforcement learning has actually trained them to do, to make things, to produce text that looks like what is correct, which for many applications is good enough. So the errors are often really subtle, and then when you spot them, they're really stupid. Like no human would have actually made that mistake.
Yeah, it's actually really frustrating in the programming context because I program a lot, and when a human makes low quality code, there's something called code smell, right? You can tell. You can tell immediately, there's signs. But with AI generate code,
they're odorless.
And then you're right. Yeah. Eventually, you find an obvious dumb thing that just looks like good code.
Yeah, so
it's very tricky and frustrating for some reason to have to work.
So the sense of smell. Okay, there you go. This is one thing that humans have, and there's a metaphorical mathematical smell that it's not clear how to get the AI to duplicate that. Eventually, so the way AlphaZero and so forth to make progress on Go and chess and so forth is in some sense they have developed a sense of smell for Go and chess positions. That this position is good for white, this is good for black. They can't enunciate why, but just having that sense of smell lets them strategize. So if AIs gain that ability to sort of a sense of viability of certain proof strategies, so you can say, I'm going to try to break up this problem into two small subtasks, and they can say, this looks good. The two tasks look like they're simpler tasks than your main task, and they still got a good chance of being true. So this is good to try. Or no, you made the problem worse because each of the two subproblems is actually harder than your original problem, which is actually what normally happens if you try a random thing to try. Normally, it's very easy to transform a problem into an even harder problem. Very rarely do you transform to a simpler problem. So if they can pick up a sense of smell, then they could maybe start competing with human level mathematicians.
So this is a hard question, but not competing, but collaborating.
Yeah.
Hypothetical. If I gave you an oracle that was able to do some aspect of what you do, and you could just collaborate with it.
Yeah.
What would you like that oracle to be able to do? Would you like it to maybe be a verifier, like check do the code smell like yes, Professor Tao, this is a promising, fruitful direction.
Yeah.
Or would you like it to generate possible proofs and then you see which one is the right one? Or would you like it to maybe generate different representation, totally different ways of seeing this problem?
Yeah, I think all of the above. A lot of it is we don't know how to use these tools because it's a paradigm that it's not. We have not had in the past assistants that are competent enough to understand complex instructions that can work at massive scale, but are also unreliable. It's an interesting, a bit unreliable in subtle ways, whilst providing superficially good output. It's an interesting combination. You have like graduate students that you work with who are kind of like this, but not at scale. And we had previous software tools that can work at scale, but very narrow. So we have to figure out how to use. So Tim Gowers actually, you mentioned, he actually foresaw, like in 2000, he was envisioning what mathematics would look like in actually 2.5 decades. And
that's funny.
Yeah, he wrote in his article like a hypothetical conversation between a mathematical assistant of the future and himself. Trying to solve a problem, and they would have a conversation. Sometimes the human would propose an idea, and the AI would evaluate it. And sometimes the AI would propose an idea, and sometimes a computation was required, and AI would just go and say, "Okay, I've checked the 100 cases needed here," or the first you said this is true for all n. I've checked it for n up to 100, and it looks good so far. Or hang on, there's a problem at n equals 46. And so just a free-form conversation where you don't know in advance where things are going to go, but just based on I think ideas get proposed on both sides, calculations get proposed on both sides. I've had conversations with AI where I say, okay, we're going to collaborate to solve this math problem. And it's a problem that I already know the solution to. So I try to prompt it. Okay, so here's the problem. I suggest using this tool. And then it'll find this lovely argument using a completely different tool, which eventually goes into the weeds and say, no, try using this. Okay, and it might start using this, and then it'll go back to the tool that I wanted to do before. And like you have to keep railroading it onto the path you want. And I could eventually force it to give the proof I wanted, but it was like herding cats. And the amount of personal effort I had to take to not just sort of prompt it, but also check its output, because a lot of what it looked like is going to work, but I know there's a problem on line 17, and basically arguing with it. It was more exhausting than doing it unassisted. So but that's the current state of the art.
I wonder if there's a phase shift that happens to where it's no longer feels like herding cats, and maybe you'll surprise us how quickly that comes.
I believe so. So in formalization, I mentioned before that it takes 10 times longer to formalize a proof than to write it by hand. With these modern AI tools, and also just better tooling, the lean developers are doing a great job adding more and more features and making it user-friendly. It's going from 9 to 8 to 7. Okay, no big deal. But one day it will drop below 1. And that's a phase shift. Because suddenly it makes sense when you write a paper to write it in lean first, or through a conversation with AI, which is generating lean on the fly with you. And it becomes natural for journals to accept, maybe they'll offer expedite refereeing. That if a paper has already been formalized in lean, they'll just ask the referee to comment on the significance of the results and how it connects to literature, and not worry so much about the correctness. Because that's been certified. Papers are getting longer and longer in mathematics, and actually it's harder and harder to get good refereeing for the really long ones, unless they're really important. It is actually an issue, and the formalization is coming in at just the right time for this to be.
And the easier and easier it gets because of the tooling and all the other factors, then you're going to see much more like math lib will grow potentially exponentially. It's a virtuous cycle. Okay.
One phase shift of this type that happened in the past was the adoption of LaTeX. So LaTeX is this typesetting language that all mathematicians use now. So in the past, people used all kinds of word processors and typewriters and whatever. But at some point, LaTeX became easier to use than all other competitors, and people just switched, within a few years. Like it was just a dramatic